Hey everyone, this is Tony Reeves. If you like my content or have any suggestions, please let me know, and by all means, make sure you share. The only way I can get my word out is you help me get the word out as well. Hey everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to 2021, and this is Reeves Point of View. Today I'm going to talk about the reality of poverty and access to public benefits. This actually started because I had the opportunity to review an article or read this article about how teachers who are used to working with children who they provide free meals for in the morning, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, were finding themselves delivering those meals to the homes of the students and realizing the extent of the poverty that they were living through. I can tell you that when I used to practice law, I liked to go to my client's house, but not only going to their homes, their apartments, wherever they lived, but I also took the opportunity to try to engage in some of the things that they did, whether it be going over to the health department, whether it be going to nonprofit services. So I could actually see, because what happens is that when you see it, you get a greater appreciation of what they're going through. And I just want to share with you a few things that I think the public often miss when it comes to poverty and accessing public benefits. Mass transit is a real deal. When you're in a situation where, if you're in a major metro city, I grew up in a rural town. I didn't have mass transit. We had buses, but where we lived, it wasn't an integral part of getting from point A to point B. And I lived in the rural South, and so most of the places that I grew up and went to, they didn't have subways or an intricate system of buses or railways or things like that. So if you're living in a major metro city, maneuvering going from point A to point B may not be too cray-cray. But if you're living in a rural area or an area where the transit system kind of is stretched out, it can be crazy navigating. Imagine a situation where you're living in a town or an area that has mass transit, but in order to get to the nearest bus stop, it's like a mile away or maybe several blocks away just to get to that one stop. So that means, one, you got to figure out what time that bus gets there. Secondly, you've got to make sure you give yourself enough time to leave to walk to that location. And depending on where you're going, more than likely, it's not going to be a straight shot. So you're going to have to travel and take in consideration the fact that you change buses. And that can be a nightmare if you're trying to get someplace on time and you're relying upon the ability to be able to move from point A to point B. Which brings me to another fascinating point with regards to jurisdiction. What you're going to find is that, and what most people don't realize, is that if you're getting benefits through the counties dictate where you're going to go get with your benefits. Why is that important? Well, guess what? Let me just give you a great example. I remember representing clients where they were literally on the boundaries of counties, which meant that they were literally closer to getting access to services from the county next to them than their own county. So you're thinking, how does that work? Imagine being in a town that sits on the border of a county, and maybe there are some medical providers or healthcare providers or food assistance or anything like that. And literally, you can just walk across the street into the neighboring county and have access, but you can't utilize it because you're not a part of that county. That's a reality for a lot of people. So now they're sitting here going, this is just crazy. So what I need is right next door, but I have to avail myself of what's in this county because that county is a wholly different jurisdiction. And so now I have to go through the nightmare of going from point A all the way across when the resources I need is literally that close. Then comes the food choices. Whether it be food stamps or WIC or whatever the case may be, when you're on a fixed income, like I said, whether food stamps or WIC or so forth like that, you're gonna have to make some hard choices. And sometimes the choice between balancing what you want to eat that may be healthier for you and balancing what you can eat that can last longer almost always wins out. So whereby you may be thinking, okay, I need to get this type of thing because it nourishes my body. But because I'm gonna have to pay more for that, even though it's going to nourish my body, it's not, I'm going to only be able to eat that for a shorter period of time as opposed to this, which is probably not as healthy for me, but I can make last longer. Those are decisions that people have to make that we often overlook. Then doctors. Access, appointments, and procedures. I got to give you this great story. I had a family member once who had this medical procedure done, and when they were doing the procedure, they found that there was something else that needed to be worked on. Now, mind you, she was going through public assistance at the time, so her surgery only covered what they were doing. So brace you to this reality. They couldn't really do anything with that while they were there. Now, I can understand from a consent standpoint, because, got to give them the pros and cons, whatever the case may be. But then the wild part was, I think, and I asked her to confirm it for me today, but I haven't got back with her. But the wild part is, I think it took almost a year for her to get a follow-up, for them to confirm that was the problem, for them to do a doctor workup, for her to get an appointment, for her to schedule the procedure, for her to have the procedure done. Now, I can tell you, most people who have private health insurance, they probably could have had that whole episode done probably within a couple of months. It took her a year because she was navigating through all these different systems. And the other thing that was fascinating was that these weren't her primary doctors. She was going through the public health system and utilizing it in order to be able to get the treatment that she needed from a doctor that wasn't her own. She had a primary who basically had to set her up with a specialist and set her up with a different specialist. But these are all these hurdles that you don't realize if you got private insurance through your employer or something like that, or you're on your husband or your wife's plan and you go by and get what you need really quickly. You don't realize the headaches that they have to go through, especially if they're dealing with doctors who are volunteers, that are not part of their network, and they're basically affording you their time to be able to do so. And you have to go through all of these processes and procedures to get to that point. We often take for granted little things that we have on a regular basis, like electricity. I mean, that's gonna sound silly, but how often do we say people, oh, you connect to this, and they're like, well, I don't have any electricity. What do they do then? How about internet service? As silly as it may seem, not everybody has internet service. Not everybody has great internet service, depending on what you're getting. You may, even if you're living in an area that's basically like a black hole because your internet coverage is really weak, you may have to go literally somewhere else to get a better connection. That's a reality for some people that we often overlook.